at 4:45. I like to have that psychological win over the enemy. The enemy. When I wake up in the morning and I don't know why, I'm thinking about the enemy. And what they're doing. And I know I'm not active.
Hey, you guys rock. Thanks for taking out the time today. Really appreciate it.
Good to be here, brother.
So Zach, you were on the talent show before I started the Meaningcast, and Anthony, you were actually the first Meaningcast guest because I recruited you to guest on the talent show, and after our recording, I was like, we've tapped into something here, and it's no longer about the talent show. It's about something different, and the Meaningcast popped up, and we've been rolling strong. So I really appreciate you guys coming on for a second time and this time together.
Oh, it's awesome, man. It's cool to see what you're doing, and I like how from the talents to the meeting. I mean, that's the whole point of what we're all doing, right? Is what's the next thing? And you think you're there, but it's not until you're there that you can see further. You're like, oh man, we can go even higher with this. We can go deeper with this and have the discussion that's really going to matter.
And you guys are doing that with Oak Rock, right? Maybe you can talk about that for a second. I think it'd be good to let people know what you've gotten onto as a team.
No, absolutely. I mean, so Anthony, he joined the Fraternity of Excellence, and one of the things he brought with him was he wanted to run a fatherhood weekly call, and I saw the benefit from that. And he came in. Obviously he's coming from Peaceful Fathers, so like cool. Like I really dig what he's about. I've got the family alpha. It's very complimentary, and then just the more men that showed up, the more I realized I was like, Anthony, dude, there's something to this. Like I really think there's something to this specific focus on fatherhood, and we just started talking, and him and I just. In our personal lives about our family, what we're doing, how we're growing, where we're going, it just kept blooming. I was like, dude, let's bring this public. And we did.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it too, because I think I know it's a real thing and it's really topical. I've been going to a men's group for the better part of a year. And one of the biggest things you see are people looking for examples and then talking about their lack of example from their childhood or even in their adult life, not having good examples to look at and mold their character around and just be better people. It's about always improving. So Rock and Oak, or Oak and Rock, I always get it mixed up, is an improvement on what you were doing, not necessarily the fraternity excellence needed improvement, but going to the next level, right? Like constantly looking for a better way to tap deeper. And so, yeah, just talking about tapping deeper and being better fathers. Why, from your perspective, there's a huge focus on the lack of, the decline of man, right? A lack of good examples for men to follow. But I think, Anthony, you talked about it in your latest blog article. There's a lot of people that are not feeling worthy of stepping into manhood. And there's a real culture that kind of keeps them down and reinforces that, right? So you take the lack of fatherlessness or an example that wasn't there, and then the culture on top of it. So I'm curious because our culture is very lucky in that we're pretty blessed, right, to have a lot. And looking up statistics before the call, the United States leads the world in single family homes, and I think our our wealth, just I can't think of the right term right now. That's not the right term, but the advantages that we have here allows us to focus on the wrong problems, right? And I think there's something to be said about there's a lot of fathers out there who think they're doing a really good job, but they're not. What do you have to say about that? Because I feel I'm not the expert, and it's a feeling I have, and
we're not experts either, Joe.
Yeah, okay.
We're just two dads building families and sharing our experience. I mean, we might know a lot, but a lot of that is time invested. It's being intentional with our time we spend with our family. But we just did a whole video on this about fatherless homes and what's going on in this country and how crazy it is. And going back to what you were saying about the experience and I guess the camaraderie, the rites of passage, right? The way that men are brought up. And me and Zach say this all the time, that everybody blames the kids. Everybody's focusing on what the kids are doing, what they're not doing, how misbehaved they are. And nobody connects the dots. Nobody sees that, 50 years ago, we had grandfathers in the home who were strong men, right? They might have had their faults, but at least they were a masculine influence. You have generations of kids growing up now who have no masculine influence. They have no effects, no results of having a good man who's going to teach them and guide them. So it's to me, if you want to fix problems, you have to look at the cause, right? You can't always just see the effects. And I believe once we start doing that, me and Zach talk about it all the time also, about holding men accountable, right? We have to have fathers accountable. We have to say, if we want healthy families, then men have to be healthy, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. We need to keep improving ourselves, and then we'll see it, transcend to our children. I don't think that's, we're not having that right now.
I've woken up from being kind of asleep in this regard, and I'm really fortunate to have a wife. I think we may have talked about this before, Anthony, that is very attuned to, the peaceful mothering side of what you talk about in terms of peaceful fathering. And I was really resistant to a lot of the things that she was teaching me. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I'm fully bought in now into being present and to being there for my children and what that really means, right? It's a lot more than just, being there at night, physically present. It's a lot more than carving out some time and physically being there on the weekend. It's really deeper than that. But I want to stay on this topic of, waking guys up who feel like they're doing a great job, but, they're just like I was a year ago, and they're completely numb to the deeper part of it. There's people in my life that are close to me who I've confronted in a friendly way, and let them know I think that they're, and I haven't dug on this deep, right? Because I'm not trying to I'm not an expert, like I said, right? I'm just a dad trying to do well and be a good example and shake the box a little bit for my friends and family and whomever. And, you mention it to people. For this example, I mentioned that, hey, when I'm around you, I notice that you're kind of zoned out, right? Like you're just like in a catatonic, you're disassociated in certain settings, right? And I know that's not healthy. I know that I've come out of a certain degree of that, and I want to make you aware of it. What are some things, I'm just curious, like how do you confront, approach other men who aren't going to men's group, who aren't trying to better themselves, but they're important people in your life? How do you take something that you recognize as a fault or a shortcoming and kind of try to help build them up?
Well, one of the things you need to look at, I don't look at it as those in my inner circle are the people I'm trying to help. If this is who you are and this is what you're choosing to do, this isn't just for the select people that you're like, oh, that's my friend, that's my brother-in-law, that's my dad. No, when you come into FOE, it's everybody in the group. We work together. When I'm out here, when I go and coach my kids' sports, every single dad that's there, I'm looking to engage. Every single one of those kids has a father that they could better connect with. So this isn't about, hey, let me grab those in my inner circle. Hey, how can I help fathers be better fathers? It's through embodying those values that you are espousing. It's easy. I mean, we live on a level, dude, everything is surface level. The resistance you hit to go deeper is too much for most people out there. They'll work out a little bit. I go to the gym once or twice a week, but they go and they sit in the treadmill. They'll do that for an hour, maybe hit their arms for a little bit, and they leave. And they'll do that. All right, I'm really sore. Woo, really hit that one. They'll have that one good meal out of like the 15 throughout their week. Oh man, I'm trying to eat right. No, man, if you really want to commit to something, if you really want change, you're consistent with your training. You're consistent with your eating. I don't see, and thanks to working with Anthony, when people deal with their money, oh, I bought that thing on sale, or I saved and I budgeted for these 2 days. No, dude, if you want wealth and you want to fix your debt issues, you've got to go all in. You've got to track where is every penny going and why? And is there a way to save it and plug those holes? Fatherhood is no different. Yeah. If you're going to try and get your body right, you want to try and get your money right. I view the same thing with being a father. Go deeper, show up more. Sitting there is not enough. So when you're talking about, well, how do we impact these guys who are still sleeping? Dude, you bring literally, I walk on the field, I say, hey, you and you, Dad, can you come help me? And I pull them into the fray. I go out there, I live this. In the store, I speak up. This is how the fuck I live. It's who I am. I embody this. So it's not just for the FOE guys. It's not just for my friends and family. When you go out there as a father and you show that example of playing on the playground with your kids, throwing the ball with your kids, these other dads see you. And that's how you kind of wake them up. And maybe they don't notice at first, but you keep doing it. Eventually, one of those dads is going to walk out there with you, or their wife or kid is going to shame them. Be like, yo, that guy, he's coming out here and playing with his kid. Where are you at, Dad? And they're like, oh. Yeah. Then they'll get up and then they'll go help out. That's my hope, at least. That's the whole how it plays out in my head. Whether that's working or not, I mean, I hope so. Sometimes I feel like I'm in an echo chamber, but I do see more fathers stepping up.
Yeah, Anthony, you want to say something to that?
Yeah, no, I just would second what Zac said. We talk to a lot of men. We're always trying to stay positive, stay focused. And I think, with holding men accountable, if we can be better fathers, that improves ourselves, right? We have to do inner work. We have to calm our patience. We have to, work on self-regulation. We have to be clear with our words and how we speak to people. So you're evolving, you're building. And what I've seen with being around Zac is, even with men, right? We want to make sure the friendships, the relationships we're having are genuine, are honest. You see a lot of kids who are raised in homes who are always being manipulated. They're being criticized and threatened. And with my experience, things that I've learned, that doesn't help with growth, right? Nothing helps from being beaten down. What Zac was saying is, even within men's group, just keep being the example, right? Keep showing up, keep doing things. And don't worry about the people who are criticizing you. Don't worry about the other men who are jealous. It's kind of like a huge mindset that you're bringing within the group of men, within your family, and within yourself.
Yep.
So, that's where, I start connecting the dots, and I start seeing how my kids are growing up, what they think, by the direct example of the people I hold close to me. They're going to have better people in their life. And I better make sure that the way that I treat my kids is better than I treat anybody, right? Better than my friends, better than my parents. My kids depend on me. So I have to make sure that I'm always at a really high level and being conscious and aware, because I don't want to damage the development of a brain that literally depends on how good I'm going to be to them. So it's a big responsibility, brother.
Dude, and you hit like 25,000 things there that are extremely important. I mean, that was a jam-packed statement. And I went back to this weekend. I was playing ultimate Frisbee with some new friends, right? Friends I've developed over this last year. People that I've taken an example from, right? And we're out there playing ultimate Frisbee for the first time. And my son, it's really his first time playing a team sport. He played soccer when he was 5, but he's not into team sports right now. But we went out there, played with some adults, and they were really, really kind. They were really, really open. And there was one moment where Conrad had asked me a question, and I answered him. And my friend noticed that he was frustrated still. I didn't, right? And I noticed that my friend noticed, because he stopped and he said, "Hey, Conrad, what is it that you need?" And Conrad just needed a little bit more attention, and my buddy gave it to him, right? And I think there was maybe a time that I wouldn't have taken that as an opportunity to learn, and I would have let that just go past me. And I'm always trying to improve. And this is a big part of my self-improvement, is that being self-aware, being that calm presence, then that's part of being present, right? When you can have that calm presence, you can be present. So I was playing ultimate Frisbee, my adrenaline's pumping, right? The competitive nature's out. And that was enough to kind of blunt my ability to be there for my son in a deep way. It was a real eye opener. And I'm glad that I was around men who were able to lift us both up, because I didn't do anything wrong. I had a moment where I just missed an opportunity, and thank God I was there to figure out the situation in my head, self-reflect, and we'll adjust moving forward. But I mean, that hits to your point of self-regulation, self-awareness, and also being around the right people. So this is huge. My son totally benefited from that situation where in another setting, it could have been a downward spiral. I mean, it wasn't, for the record, Conrad has a lot to do with team sports. And I'm glad I got him out there amongst good men who were able to, show him a good example. Right. So, Anthony, that was a huge statement. That's exactly where my mind went because, I consider myself somebody who's really working on this, but I fall sometimes. And that's kind of big to be able to admit that.
But that's the point of the group, right? That's why you have friends. That's why you have people who can step in. Like, I got you, man. That's what we do. You roll with dads who notice those things or men who notice those things. And in that moment, dude, when I miss, I would hope that you or Anthony would swoop in and be like, hey, Zac, I can't see everything. I'm not perfect. Neither are you. No dad is. Hence the strength of having a group of strong dads because they'll see what you don't. That's how the group works. That's why it's so strong.
So what's going on in America, guys? Why are men so beaten down?
That's a hard
an
left
easy
right
question,
there.
Joe. Yeah. No, I want to add one more thing to what,
Yeah, sure.
what Zac was saying. And I see this as, we don't want to shame men. We don't want to guilt them. We don't want to have regrets. We can't change the past. But what we can do is continually work on becoming better. I'm 44 and I'm always trying to improve and find ways, no matter what element or aspect of my life it is. And I look back sometimes and, I was a pretty involved father when my kids were young. I went to all my girls, dancing events and, that my daughters were in dance. They were in, they played sports. My son played sports. I tried to coach. What I will say is, I watch Zac and what he does with his kids and how he interacts. And I'm like, man, I completely missed the mark when I was that age, right?
Yeah.
And I don't look back at it as a bad thing, but I look at it as, him being younger than me, how great his kids are going to benefit from him being involved. And then what my kids are going to be like with their kids. And it's just this natural evolution that's going to, once it gets going and we see a few generations of this, it won't be stopped. Right. So getting back to your problem with America, there's a good leading into it.
Well,
that
listen,
was a great segue.
There's not enough examples. I mean, you answered the question. There's not enough examples, right? Because even Anthony, as somebody senior to Zac, not
that much older,
not in cool, but in age.
We use his discounts.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a perfect example of the importance of an example, right? Because you're going to be able to pass that on to the people you coach, right? That's not something that you were as sensitive to before, maybe, right? Or you weren't going to be in it, you weren't in that same way. And I think that's listen, there's a lot about men being beat down in this country, about the, they're being infantilized, they're being just deemed as unimportant. I was at a movie with my son this weekend and the male lead was a guy who, ate like an animal, had food all over his face, couldn't hold a job, lived out of a van, was ruining everything for everybody. He was basically the walking disaster that the movie was trying to overcome. All right. So I won't name the movie, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's what it was, right? So you have that type of example being put out there and you have a lack of actual examples. The men's group has been the biggest thing for me in terms of turning a corner because the knowledge is great, but how do you apply it unless you have an example, right? Like, how do you play Mozart unless you actually hear Mozart, right? I mean, you're never going to have a chance to achieve greatness in anything unless you have something that's a high aim to aspire to. So if you're just consuming masculinity from the theater, you're screwed, right? So it's very important to get out there. You've been doing the men's group thing for a while, Zac. I've just gotten started and our men's group is all about, dividing and conquering in that we grew, we split. And now those two groups are bound to split again. Actually, one of them already did into a smaller third group. And, there's going to be 4 or 5 groups, I bet, by the end of the year or within the next few months. How do we, I want to be an example. I want to be out there, but men's groups are really important because it actually brings people together to focus on that. So do you want to talk about men's groups for a little bit? And because we got to get men in front of real men that aren't in the movies. Men's groups have been a real big thing for me. And I know a lot of guys are hesitant because it's not cool. Anthony, you talked about, I'm going to go on for another second, guys, because you hit a lot on that statement, Anthony. You talked about not being afraid of what other people think. I guarantee you, people that don't come to the men's group after I invite them is just because that's cheesy and corny. If somebody figures out I'm doing that, they're going to think I'm a sissy. They're going to wondering, what's wrong with me. And that fear of being judged is the biggest blocker to people getting out of their own way and becoming better people. Right. So how do, I don't know, being an example, you're going to probably go back to the easy answer, right? Just keep asking. But, are there any tactics you can do? Are there any tactics? And I'm always looking for tactics. Maybe I just got to shut up and be an example, but I always want to do better, right? I want to, I haven't gotten too many people to come to the men's group. How do I do a better job? How do I approach this better? Because I know how much it'll help them.
Well, that's a very loaded question. In what are you trying to do? You're trying to get people to show up to a park. You're trying to get dudes to pay to attend an event. You're trying to rally. You don't answer that.
Yeah, no,
this is great.
This is great. Let's have a conversation. It's a Christian men's group and we meet at somebody's house and there's food provided. We switch up whose house it's at. We switch up who gets food. It's a brotherhood of socializing. And then we sit around a circle for an hour and a half and get things off our chest and, talk about our experiences.
So to answer your question on what's going on with American men, I think a part of it is in what you just listed. American men they're very comfortable individuals and everything's telling them that's okay. And from every angle, which you could see where you would find that source of inspiration, like a lot of good books. Well, books have been neutered. A lot of good movies. A lot of guys have been neutered in those movies. Okay, fuck it. You're talking about being the example. You start living that kind of life. The movie's not going to give me permission. These books aren't going to give me permission. I have to give myself permission because I am a free man. And what you were saying on, we've got these men who are beaten up in that movie you were talking about. Well, how do we be better? All you have to do is show these men there's another way. Hey, that guy is living differently than everybody else. He is I want to be like that. When I think about my kids, and to kind of flip it back to Anthony, when I see somebody who's raising 20-year-olds, 19-year-old, these kids, boys and girls going out in the world and flourishing, and all I hear is negative, negative, negative. I'm watching Anthony's family like they're not negative. Those kids are doing fantastic. I want my kids at that age to be doing the same. I want that type of relationship. I see a better example. So I'm trying harder in my life. These men who are looking at poor examples haven't found a good example, so they're stuck. So when you're talking about being the better example, literally in every aspect of what you're doing, do more. You want more events? Good. Have those meetups, but do something with those men. Maybe they're tired of sitting around in the circle. Maybe their spouse doesn't see the benefit to it. Okay, bring them out in an open area where they're not spending an evening away from the family, but just like a trip to the park, the ultimate play, whatever it is. Get those men together and go do something and talk about shit that nobody else talks about. Hey, man. And then the door opens to everything. How's your relationship with the kids, your spouse, your money, your physique? You can't interrogate these men, but what you can do is start talking to them about the things that are off limits to everybody else. And they see, oh shit, this guy's for real. He's not saying, hey, how's your day? Did you watch the Patriots win? Cool, buddy. It's like, no, dude, how's your relationship with your son? How's your daughter doing in school? Hey, I noticed you and your what? Dude, men are not neutered because men, we're all just a bunch of weak pussies. They're just being conditioned by everybody and they're being beaten down. And many of these men that we're mocking didn't even have a chance. They had no role model, not an involved father. They had nobody there to say, hey, you're allowed to stand up while these people kneel. And that's the biggest issue I've seen. So when it comes to literally answering your question on America, I think we need more examples of men standing up. To answer your question on your meetup, do more marketing, more ads, more podcasts, more everything. And then you start making it more normal for people to be involved in things like this.
Love it. Dude, that was hot.
You got him going, good. Joe.
Yeah, I did. That was good.
I poke the bear every once in a while on our videos.
I'm hung up. Stop him. I'm hung up on this thing with guys, not, guys and people in general just being afraid of being judged, right? So that's really good, Zach, that's why that advice is, or that comment, I don't want to call it advice, is really good. You know, it's just do more, be more of an example, just flood it with examples. I analyze a lot, and it's just about doing, right? You can't be stuck thinking about what to do. Just do what you know is right, and more of it. If you're already doing something that's good, just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Well, look at the routine most men are in. I mean, these men they go to work, they come home, they relax, they go to work. They're nothing but plow horses. They don't even realize it though. They think they're doing the right thing. You know, and Anthony, the discussions we've had with men who are like, oh, I didn't even realize I should stop yelling at my kids to eat dinner. Like, we could have a stress-free dinner, a stress-free meal time, a stress-free dinner time. You can go out instead of sitting and scrolling your phone while your kid's scrolling their tablet or watching TV, put the electronics away and go throw a football, go kick a ball around, or as you did, go play Frisbee or something. They don't even realize they're in this thing. It's like you don't need the chains, you know, for slavery anymore. You have this little device, and people are they're staying in their box. And now that allows that kid to grow up totally vulnerable to what the government wants, that school wants, what other people want, because dad isn't there to protect them or teach them anything.
Yeah, Anthony, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say conditioning, right? What Zac said, everybody is so conditioned to be a certain way. And, you know, with the men's group, it's great to have men come together and share experiences and build and get better. But I bring everything back to childhood. So if we look at society where it's at, you know, we have men who are supposed to be protecting, supposed to be providing and being the examples for our kids and for our family. But we are in dark times, right? We're in a strange place in the history of this country. We have all these kids who are on medication, right? I think you probably know better than me, but it's probably 1 in 7 or 1 in 10 kids have been diagnosed with a mental disorder now. And
I'll stop you real quick, Anthony. I'll just add in there. And what's the number one reason? Not the number one. A big reason of that is getting hit, getting spanked, getting put down and shamed by their parents who are just unwittingly doing it. They do it in passing. They say this comment and they don't realize the damage it's doing. And that's what it is. Go ahead.
Well, that's where the conditioning starts, right? We start conditioning our kids to be victims, to be full of that shame. How are you supposed to become a man and ask other men for help if when you get into that zone of thinking and your brain is telling you, no, that man is he's gonna criticize you, he's gonna shame you.
No, that's barrier. It is. When I started going to the men's group, it took me 6 months to open up. I sat there and listened, said some smart stuff, right, to try to lift myself up, but never was genuine, right? Never shared my problems, maybe on the surface. And after about 6 months, when I finally let myself be vulnerable, magic started to happen. And I was at a men's group. So it's a different men's group than that one, because like I said, we split up. It's the same kind of nuclear group, but a smaller offshoot of it. Guy was there for the very first time, and he was a former military. I didn't know at the time that it was his first time there. I thought this was just a guy I haven't seen before, or maybe he's been coming for weeks or months. Man, he laid out like some real stuff. And it was a blessing that every single man that was there because he needed to hear something only each one of those men had to say, right? Like, it was just one of those experiences where I was happy that I decided to go that night. But I noticed after I figured out that he was there for the first, I actually stopped. I was like, wait, this is your first time here? And he has a military background. So even though, I don't know what his examples were before getting in the military, but I think Zac, you served, right? There's probably a good chance you're going to be, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say there's a good chance because I don't know. I'm hoping that if you go into the military, if you're in the service, you have a good chance of seeing some really good examples concentrated in that type of area that you might not otherwise. And maybe that's what helped him come out, because, I never served. I never had those type of examples of being vulnerable. So it took me a while to learn and watch other people until I finally was ready to come out. So.
Well, it's like anything else. It's one of those things that once you do it, you understand the importance of it. Getting to that point of just opening up and bearing your soul to strangers is not easy. But in the military, you're literally stripped of everything and rebuilt in front of the eyes of those who are raising you up. You're used to brotherhood. You're used to camaraderie. You're used to having to bounce around. And the only way to What do you have to lose to meet a dude like, hey, dude, we're stuck together for the next year, sitting, floating around in this thing. I might as well get to, like, here's the real me. Here's the shit I went through. Here's the things in that community too, though. You know that those people are going through just as much shit as you. They're in the same situation as you. So there's trust there. You also know they're going to leave. So it's like, what do you have to lose? Like, hey, you're here. You're going to leave. You're not going to judge me. I'm not going to know you forever. You're not going to go and see, you know, my wife and kids and everything. They might not. So you're just like, fuck it. Let's go. Let's accelerate this growth. That's how all men need to be. This man that you're speaking of probably hit that point where he understood, hey, what do I have to lose? There's nothing I can lose by just opening up. And if you guys can't handle it, well, you're not as strong as you be pretending to put out there as, I'm going to lead this group. If you're going to lead a men's group, you better be ready to carry some heavy shit, because these men come in with some heavy topics and they need help. And if you can't handle that, if you can't manage that, you need to ensure that you're putting somebody at the head of that table that can, because they need to be able to help that individual. And that's where I sit with FOE. These guys come in with some very heavy topics, and I've got to figure out, how do I handle this? How do I have this discussion and ensure this man not only is heard, but he's not judged? And if what he's doing is wrong and I push against his most vulnerable area, I do so from a position of love. Because if I do it from a position of judgment, of just absolute anger, they're never coming back. But if it's like, hey man, I'm going to kick your ass because I want you to do well, that is understood by them. They're like, I hate what you're saying, but I know you're saying it because I need to hear it.
You said the L word, Zach. Not many men are comfortable saying that.
I ain't no bitch.
We say that
That's
all the
right.
time. We say that all the time in a fraternity.
We do too in my men's group. It was funny, man. Me and my buddy. So I'm in like, you know, not many men's groups, but there's a leadership group at church at 6:30 in the morning, and saying bye to one of my buddies who we had a really real conversation with that day. Later, Kenny, love you. I was like, I felt good, right? It wasn't weird at all. And he said, love you too, man. It was like, that's awesome. That's the way it should be, man. There's some real bonding going on there. And that's important. I never had that in any of my relationships before I start to have real conversations.
Yeah, well, it's a real relationship, right? It's genuine. It's how they should be. And so many times we see men who are afraid to hug each other. They're afraid to say that they, you know, I love you or I appreciate you. It's become so foreign. And I to a degree, I believe that's what they want, right? That's what the system wants. It doesn't want men to be connected. It doesn't want us to strong bonds. So I think that's why you see this lack of friendship, right? This lack of male bonding. You know, so many men, they'll get involved or they'll be involved. And, you know, I see it with an FOE, you know, sometimes guys drop out and they don't even say one word. They'll be there for a month and you'll never hear from them. They'll be so afraid or just not feeling good about what's going on that they won't even join in and they'll just leave. And it's, you know, like Zach was saying, there is a balance that you need to have. You need to make sure that guys can trust you, that what you're, you know, it's not just your words, but it's your actions. And, you know, a lot of times I think we resort as men to that childhood behavior, right? If things get tough or somebody's doing something we don't like, or, you know, we feel like our feelings might have got hurt, we withdraw. We completely avoid, instead of doing the things that are strong and powerful, saying, hey man, what did you mean by that? Why did you say that about me? Or what, you know, why are you having an attitude with me? Men don't want to do that because sometimes it creates confrontation. And to a degree, we can't handle it. And I don't mean physically, emotionally, we can't handle it, right? Physically, you know, there'll be fights. I mean, that's where competition comes in. That's where, you know, you're saying you were playing your Frisbee, you know, that's where you can compete with other men and you can challenge each other. I think emotionally, men need to challenge each other more on those levels. We need to say, hey, if we're going to build a friendship, we're going to have a good bond, right? If I say something that bothers you, don't run away. Let's deal with it.
Yeah, let's deal with it. It's hard to deal with things if you've spent your whole life watching the models in your life not, and then you not, right? So I think we're in a really sticky situation where there's a lot of people that are really stuck in mud What are some things besides the movies, Anthony, that you see out there that people need to be aware of? Just have their antenna up a little bit to say, hey, that's not normal, right? I mentioned the movie. I don't think it's normal for the guy to, that's not every guy. That's not the men I hang out with, right? So what else do people have to have their antenna up for?
Me and Zach just did a whole video on the government's coming for your children.
Thinking of that.
There's a lot of things going on.
And I think we talked about that, Anthony, in our first show a little bit. So yeah, it's a topical issue. It's not, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, first and foremost, and this is something that we learned from a guest we had on not too long ago from Synergy Parenting, right? Is to reparent yourself. And I think the more we can dive into that and say, hey, we might have been fucked up when we were a kid. We might not have received things that we needed, but what's stopping us from building that now so we can be available to our kids, so we can give that to them? And I think if more men get on that page, right, if they can start to express that and understand how important it is, a lot of the kids in the next generation are going to be that much better than we were. And, what you see going on in the world, I think is a direct example of that missing father, of that lack of leadership. Even the dads that are in the home who are absent, who aren't being involved, right? We need to encourage them and say, hey, man, listen, this isn't a prison sentence. You're not a victim. You have the greatest opportunity, if you pay attention, to help your kids become better than you ever were. Why are you so stuck behind? Why are you listening to these politicians, these sociopaths that are controlling your money, controlling your thoughts, controlling your ideas? You have to make sure the time, what you're spending your time on is valuable, is putting you in the right direction. There's way too many distractions going on right now. And another one is the system we live in, that hamster wheel, right? The 9 to 5, the being a good tax slave, right? Paying your taxes, earning that paycheck, giving the government 30%. I mean, I don't want to make this a segue into crypto, but you can earn more money investing in crypto with an APR than probably you'll ever make from a paycheck. There's ways outside the system, and that's just financial.
Believe it.
The way they get you, though, is to entrap your mind, right? Enslave your mind to think that you can't get out.
Yep. So we don't have to segue into crypto. We can, but you better believe it, right? Like people, when I started to bring this up to people I trusted, hey, what do you think about crypto? Stay away. Don't. This was in January of last year, right? Well, I'm glad I didn't listen to them, right? It's been a great year. That if I would have, had a fear-based mindset, I would have taken the leap, right? So I got burned a little bit. I learned a lot, but the more I stuck to it and didn't let myself run and hide, the better things have gotten, and up and to the right, and to a sharp incline, right? So it's a lot of people are probably afraid of that because of like you said, their mind's entrapped in, I gotta do this W-2 thing. I mean, Anthony, that gets into a big thing. Like, it's not just crypto, it's the whole decentralization, technology opening up the opportunity for the three of us to sit here without any permission. Nobody gave us a degree. Nobody gave us any permission. We didn't go any other rite of passage other than we got some experiences. We've dug deep within ourselves, and we're going to get out here and talk about it because it's valuable stuff. And, this is the new economy. This is crypto, right? This is creating something that can be replicated forever with zero cost, right? And if it's valuable and it's helping people, you better believe that it's going to go up into the right too, right? It might not be over the weekend 5,000% like Sheeb, right? But, over time, you're going to get some people who see it, and you're going to help some people, right? It doesn't have to be a monetary return all the time, because part of this new economy is directly related into what we're talking about with parenthood. It's building character as capital, right? The capital is more than money, right? It's more than having people working for you. It's having a character and a sense of integrity and an example of integrity that people know you by as capital, because opportunities will come your way that never would before based off that non-monetary capital that you're building. So this crypto is, basically a mindset and not a new way to make money and trade money. It's more of a mindset. Are you going to go ahead and do things that you want to do? Because guess what? With the technology out there today, it's basically you deciding not to be your best if you don't. And a lot of people don't want to step out on that limb because they're afraid of being judged. So, yeah. And I hear you, brother.
Well, I mean, if you look at it with value of money, so you have a system that everybody's paying into, and the value of the dollar is getting weaker and weaker. We've never before had something decentralized that the government doesn't control, and the value's increasing, right? So it would be like if, let's say you work for 10 years and you made 50 grand a year and you saved, your money's worthless after that 10 years in a dollar. Yeah. Imagine if you did that with crypto, with even just Bitcoin, you would have gained 6,000% on your money, because it's not being inflated. The value is not, being wiped out. So now you would have so many more people who were coming out of poverty. We wouldn't have to worry about kids not having enough food to eat. And like, these are real problems it would solve. But all you hear is that, the government says you can buy drugs with it, or you can, fund terrorism. So they try to make people afraid. It's like, quote from Harriet Tubman, and I believe it's her. She said, I freed 1,000 slaves, and I could have freed thousands more if they just would have known they were slaves.
Yes.
It's what's going on now. The government is helping them. They think that the government, and this goes back to parenting. What me and Zac say all the time, right? This is for your own good. Do as I say, eat your food. If you don't eat, I'm going to shove it down your throat. And if you throw it up, I'm going to refeed it back to you because I love you. We got to get out of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's that thing though. You see these people living this way. We look at what's the problem with America, dude. All the current men, they were raised in well, nothing's wrong with me. I was spanked. I'm fine. You're bowing down to the government. You're bending the knee immediately because you're afraid dad's going to get mad. You're not fine. There's this illusion of fine because you're able to have the things that are used to you, and they're slowly losing those things that they wanted. But as long as they're comfortable, they'll take anything. That's fine. Give me 10 shots. As long as I get my Netflix, I get to chill and dad's not mad. I don't want daddy government mad. I was telling Anthony, I don't want my kids afraid of me. I don't want my kids afraid of anything. I don't want my kids afraid of anything. If we're going to put it all on the table.
Yeah.
I want my children to want their life, to have the goals that they have, whatever those individual goals are. I'll support them forever, and they chase them and go as far as they possibly can. Not looking for permission to chase what they want. Just go and do it. They don't need the government happy with them. The government, oh, you can't have this? Fuck you. Don't tell me what I can and can't have. I'm a free individual in this country. They're trying to change the rules so we pretend that, oh, America's always been this way. No, I don't need permission to fly. I don't need permission to drive. I don't need permission to buy. Dude, they tried shutting down banks when this first happened. I don't know if you guys remember that. And they're like, yeah, banks are going to be closing down. We're looking at negative interest rates. We're looking at, you can only take this much money out. You're not allowed to go into the bank. We're like, wait a minute. You have my money. You're holding it. That's all you're literally doing it. Or all you're literally doing. And they started to mess with that. And that was my first real understanding of how little control I had over my funds the day the bank said, hey, we're shutting down today. I didn't need it. I had my reserves, but what if I didn't?
Yep.
And that's obviously pulling us to a different part of this conversation, but at large, your mindset, if you have a freedom focused mindset that has to come from a child where you were given permission to live free, play the sports you want to play, have the passions you want to have. And if you didn't do something that mom or dad didn't like, you weren't beaten down for it.
Yeah. So I had to, part of my journey here was finally allowing myself to give myself the permission to do things like this. I've been doing, and I want to get down to North Carolina one of these days and do something live with you guys because, that's the way to go. Right. Those are real conversations happen. Not that this isn't great, but I've been having a lot of fun getting into people's environment, setting up a little makeshift podcast studio and getting after it. Right. And somebody said to me, in the most recent one I did, it was at a tattoo parlor, really cool guy in town. I'm friends with. We had a conversation, and as we're wrapping up, the hairdresser next door comes in, was like, what's it? What's this? Like, how'd you get into this? Why are you podcasting? And I said, well, I've always kind of fancied myself. This is the first time anybody ever asked me that. Right. And the answer was pretty revealing. I kind of came out with it, and it let me know that, wow, I've come a long way. I've always, not a little bit, like for a long time, like always fancied myself, on the radio. Right. I love DJs. I loved listening to talk radio. I'm a radiophile. Right. And when podcasts started coming along, it was something like, okay, this is another way to do that. And it wasn't until the pandemic and the pressure was really, 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 really on, that I finally was beginning to start to give myself permission to do this. And it took a lot for me to step out and do something that in my heart, I really, really loved and really had a passion for. And it took abandoning so many perceptions of other people and not my own perception of me to actually step out and do that. And it's a number of different things along that journey, I've stepped into that I never would have before. So it's not just doing this podcast. I have a lot of fun doing the graphics for the podcast too. I'm a creative guy, right? Getting in the digital graphics. When Photoshop came out in the late 90s and everybody was doing it, who was younger than me, I kind of thought, it was like, well, that's the kids, right? Little did I know, or I wasn't allowing myself to say, dude, you want to do that? Why don't you just do it? Like, that you can open up opportunities if you start doing that, like do it. But I didn't. So this whole mindset, Zach, we're not getting into a different conversation, because this is part of the mindset that men are lacking, is that they need permission to do things. No, it's all within you. And more now than ever, you have to do it, because just not doing it is saying you're okay with daddy telling you everything to do. And that's not cool. We're all men now, right? Dad's gone. In the Bible, it tells you to leave your father, right? Like, it's gone. You have one responsibility now, and that's your family, right? It's an added bonus if your dad's still around. But, I'm not trying to say a bigger conversation that people need to abandon their families to do anything, but you don't need to worry about that thing. Even your parents become secondary to you and your family and where you're taking them. And if you can't kind of grasp that, you need to, right? Because there is nothing more important than your kids, because sending them into the world better than you is your calling, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit there. I mean, look at it.
I'm getting it off Anthony. He knows how to pack a punch in a statement too. I can't believe I did that.
No, look, nobody's going to give you permission to live the life you want to live. Like, for real, dude, you just said North Carolina. I was in Rhode Island 3 months ago. I fucking sold my house and moved. Anthony, New York, fucking sold his house and moved. There's nothing special to this. Like, it is as blunt and direct as it sounds. You're doing your podcast. That probably makes you a better dad. I'd assume it makes you a better dad because you're following your passion and you're showing your child, hey, his passion might not be yours, but whatever it is, you understand, hey, man, that's your thing. Let me support that. Let me show you where you want to go. The easiest example is always, my kid played baseball. I played football. I didn't say, hey, kid, go play football. I said, how do I become a better baseball coach? How can I help you? Because their life is their life. But if you're not living the life you're trying to give, it's not going to work. You cannot tell your kid, hey, follow your passion. Well, dad, what the fuck do? You go to work, you come home and you're fucking sad all the time. Don't tell me to follow my passion. You didn't follow yours. They follow example, not advice. I'll
have another Bud Light while you go be miserable as well, right? That's what's happening now, right? Like, the dad's not even saying that.
But when you come around, I mean, when you're doing the podcast, I would be pressed for any other dad to not see that and at least reflect a little on themselves. Like, well, fuck, Joe's doing this. How come I'm just sitting here not doing anything? Well, nobody's going to give you permission, man. You've got to get up and go. Just take what you want. Just go for it. There's literally no negative to trying to be your best self in life. And it doesn't have to come at the expense of the family, like you were saying. I like your little disclaimer. Like, you don't have to abandon your family to follow your dreams and passions. They can be a part of it. They should be the best part because that amplifies you to wanting to be better.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the freedom mindset. It really is, right? I mean, I've never personally cared about what anybody else was doing or what people were saying about me. I kind of lived my life of trying to be a free man and trying to think outside the system and doing what's right and just ultimately, living with some virtue and being that example to my kids. Since I met Zac, he's been putting me on the spot in really uncomfortable situations, doing podcasts and videos. And now I'm starting to like, I can feel my childhood insecurity coming back, and I'm starting to care if, I mean, I don't know how many videos you've seen of us, but I suck at ending videos. I suck at beginning them, but I don't care, man. I'm going to keep doing it, right? I want to keep getting better. And the reason, some of it has to do with self-development, obviously, right? That's why we do things. If we're not doing what we're doing, that it doesn't benefit us, why are we going down that road? But the other thing is to see, the men that Zac has worked with in the past and how their lives have improved, right? I want a little bit of that, right? I want to be able to help men just by sharing how I've raised my kids, what I do as a man. And I think a lot of those men who are stuck in this trap or being conditioned on a daily, you need to start taking a step in the direction you're really getting some meaning and some purpose in your life. And I don't mean just always helping people, but stuff that's building you, stuff that you are improving within yourself. And we so quickly bash people apart or push them down, right? We say, oh, you're egotistical. Oh, you think you know everything, or, all this nonsense. Where are the guys who are saying, hey, bro, I love what you're doing. How can I help? How can I, push the message forward? You've helped me out. I think we need more of that in order to fight this sociopathic government that has its tentacles in our brains. So the more that men can step up and say, hey, we're willing to fight for what's important. We're willing to protect the children in this world, right? We're gonna blow up fucking Penn State if another football coach is raping boys for 10 years. We're not going to stand for it. It's not happening anymore. But we don't see that, right? We just get story after story after story.
No, say it isn't Joe, right? Say it isn't Joe. Oh God, say it isn't Joe, please. No, that's as far as their emotions went, right? No, it's not. It can't be Joe Paterno. It can't be Penn State. And then they let it go by because that would actually hurt to say, you know what? I can't be a part of Penn State anymore, right? I have to tell my dad or my grandfather or whatever, right? That no, I'm not going to the game with you this week and I won't support that, right? I'm not saying you have to go that far, but maybe that's where you should go because that was pretty bad, dude. And then there's something else going on. Like you just scratch the surface of a huge topic. Child sex slavery. It is a big thing. There's the Ghislaine Maxwell's going on trial this week. And, I don't think that there's any media coverage of it. The number of kids that go disappearing.
Everything's Rittenhouse, black versus white.
And it's horrible, right? I've had some people really close to my circle say some really disturbing things to me lately about divisive culture, let's just say, right? Not to get into that topic too deeply. And it's just really, really upsetting that people are thinking this way. When I think the statistic worldwide is 8 million children go missing every year. It's 400,000, I believe, in the US. I mean, this is a lot of fragile human beings. And they're not getting put in the ground. Not all of them. Guess what? They're going into dungeons. They're doing things as real sex slaves. And it's a real thing that people aren't comfortable talking about. And there is a huge case going on where politicians, world leaders, the biggest names, in the Fortune 500 are all implicated in some way, shape, or form to this woman. And I forget the name of the POS that was killed in jail last year.
Epstein.
But yeah, so I mean, this is something that people ignore, and it's part of if you can ignore that, what else are you ignoring, right? So yeah, man.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You said we're kind of scratching services and we don't have to go down. Like, why not just go down these discussions? Like, why not just like call it for what it is? We're looking at the focus on, all right, the black versus the white. I saw some tweet, Rittenhouse killed 3 black people and is walking free.
Yeah.
You're just like, these people have no
Let's
idea.
talk about it.
That's okay, because in the media, they're controlling the narrative of what's going on. Here's the thing: in a connected home, the news has no vote. In my home, in Anthony's home, likely in your home, and in people that I know personally, in their home, the news is nothing. And these people are focused, they're happy, they're driven, they're going forward. They're aware of what's going on. I'm not saying they're blind. What I'm saying is that ignorance is bliss, and these individuals are not ignorant. They're aware. They're choosing to not be a part of that game. Here's a fun fact. Mike Cernovich came on to the Family Alpha podcast, and he said, what politicians love about war is not so much the plunder and, having a reason to fund your military. It's the families that you shatter. They are broken. And that is a breeding ground for taking advantage of individuals. You can take advantage of their infrastructure. You can steal all their goods, and now they're in debt to you forever. You can steal the kids who are in broken families because all the warriors were killed in war. The only men that remain are old, sick, or just mentally evil. Just the little rats that somehow hid. Now they're there to pick off from these families. Nobody is there to protect the women. Nobody's there to protect the children. Why do we think America is any different? With the leadership we have now, why do we think that they're not trying to fracture our country and trying to fracture families with surgical precision to where it's not a bomb they're dropping on us? It's these little shots every single day on TV, on the news, on the radio, those little cuts. They're splitting the bond, the rope between parent and child, because when they're broken, now that kid can be snatched up. And now they're brought to this fucking miserable, evil life with these individuals who are just wanting nothing more than the innocence of that child. It's fucking disgusting, and nothing but aware and prepared parents can block it. And the problem is they're so fucking comfortable that these dads don't want to step up. I don't want to go work out. I don't want to pay attention to this. I want my free fucking stimulus check to take my kid. I don't care. I don't even like him. That's the world we're living in, man. And that's why things are so fucked up. The people listening to your podcast are at least aware enough of what a fucking podcast is to tune in and be like, maybe I'll listen to these guys. The people that we have issues with, they're watching MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. I don't care if you're left or right. They're all fucked up and they're all fucking evil. And they're the fucking problem. So the people listening to your podcast aren't even the people you need to reach. The people listening to our podcast, we need to reach them, obviously, but they're not the fucking bigger problem. The bigger problem is mainstream, and that's where our focus is. This podcast is great, but this is just a stepping stone.
No, and it's not about
main fucking stream, or it's not going to fucking
fired up, Joe.
Yeah, no, I like it because I'm getting fired up too. Listen, the Rage Against the Machine put out an article today, a statement on the Rittenhouse case, and it basically was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my entire life. If you guys haven't caught it, you'll just find a reason to not like Rage Against the Machine. Like, not that I'm listening to Rage Against the Machine as a 40-year-old man, but yeah, you know what? They're a nobody in my life right now because they're basically asking people to be so pissed off about something they don't know anything about. People act like they're a genius on everything else but their home, right? You know, you got Zac De La Roach. Yeah,
there's a video showing what happened. And everybody's going against their own eyes.
I mean, who's Zac De La Roach, right? Come on, dude. Like, I don't know his family situation, but you run around on stage and scream and get people going crazy, right? Like, okay, that's what you do, dude. Don't go making a statement about like something very complicated. Anthony, I believe it's black and white as well, right? But let's just call it complicated because, most things are. Stay in your lane, dude, because all you're doing is creating a bunch of anger and a bunch of division and a bunch of guys who are going to focus on something else besides their family, right? You're going to rile them up, get them emotional about the wrong things, about things that really don't exist, phantoms, like you said, Zach, all angles of the news, Fox, MSNBC, left, right, you name it. People need to have a little bit more courage and get their information from podcasts. I'm not saying that, you should be listening to my podcast for all your information, but you should go get a really big sampling of information from podcasts because the people like us don't have any vested interest other than what we're here for, because that's what we're doing is putting ourselves out there. There's nobody framing what we're putting out. There's nobody stopping us from what we're going to say. There's nobody, guiding us in any direction. We're following what we see is good to put out into the world. And what is not good to put out in the world is, hey, everybody go be mad at this thing that I know barely anything about. And probably my opinion is shaped by the media. So it's just a regurgitation of BS that's pissing people off. And people need to be pissed off about the failure in their home. People need to be pissed off that their kids moping around in school, not knowing how to defend themselves. People need to be pissed off that their kids are having problems with school education, the actual academics, and not stepping in and figuring out how to do something and letting some teacher who may or may not have great intentions, but again, that's not the parent, right? The parent needs to step up and be like, no, you haven't done something for my kid and he needs it. Let's talk about it, right? And if you're too worried about retweeting Zac De La Roach, you're lost.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Zach.
I dig the rants. No, it's good.
Well,
yeah, if you know more about Rittenhouse than what's going on in your house, you're wrong. That's been my recent little tagline. Like, I get it. Cool. It happened. This shit went down. What did you do though? I don't care about these things, and that's I guess the bigger issue here. I don't care about 99% of what most people care about. I really don't give a fuck. Focus on you. What are you doing? How can you fix it? How can I help you fix it? You said you don't have to listen. No, they should fucking listen to the very beginning to the end of every podcast you record, because you're an individual coming here trying to make things better. Not many outlets are saying, hey, dude, here's how you can build yourself up. It's like, hey, dude, stay fat, stay numb. Nobody cares. You're good. That's how you're supposed to be. Everything's fine. Sit here, consume. Nah, man, fuck that. Go build something.
And then when you do that, you hear things when you get into the podcast world and you start engaging with people who aren't motivated by fear, you start hearing things that you want to go. That's the example, right? You start hearing things that you replicate in the world. And then you start hearing things people say, and you're like, well, that's not, man, I'm finally hearing something that's different than that, right? I'm putting together a family reunion. And one of the big reasons I'm doing that is to give the younger generation, my kids, right? I have 50 plus cousins. So there's hundreds of, kids downstream from that. And me and a few of my cousins one day were talking about how great it would be to give these kids a great example of the nice, loving family that they're a part of. And there was a group of people that said, don't want to get out of my comfort zone. It'd be really weird to get in front of all those people. And I'm saying to myself, well, there's people in that group that probably need somebody who is an example, right? Like, that's the way I'm coming at things now, is that I can go be in that group and it's not about me. It's actually about me being the best I can be, so that the people around me see something that they can relate to. It's like, hey, that's my cousin's cousin and he's doing some really cool things that I never saw before. I don't see that. And, maybe I want to aspire to that. Maybe that's something I can go home and tell my friends about. And this weekend, I had my cousin over who I haven't seen in about 10 years. And I was really glad I did, because that was uncomfortable for me, right? To pick up the phone, call him up, have him over. His kids came over, have a real conversation. We didn't talk about sports. We didn't talk about anything like that. We talked about Anthony or Zach, I forget who said it, to your point. How are your kids doing in school? What's going on here? How are you doing with dating, right? Like, what's going on really in your life, right? How are things between you and your ex, right? Like, real things. Let people talk, let people share. It's important. And I'm glad I did
you
that.
live in a different world.
No, you really do, man. So like, I hear people say, I don't want to get in front of people and make myself uncomfortable. But I hear that after being in podcast world or, non-fear media world. And it's like, well, that's actually weird now. Right. And you said that on the first podcast, Anthony, has really stuck with me. You raise your children in a way so that when they get out in the world and people start manipulating them, they can immediately recognize it as that is not right. And, that, I'm just telling you, buddy, that stuck with me big time. That goes through my head just about every day. It's a self-governor, and it's something that I look for out in the world. And I want my kids going out in the world having that feeling. So examples are huge.
And you can't manipulate your kids, right? That's where they're learning it from. Most parents are manipulating their children. So they go out in the world and it's normalized.
Yep.
The government says, oh, we're going to take some of your paycheck and we're going to create welfare. And in 20 years, we're going to eradicate poverty. And 70 years later, it hasn't happened. We're worse than we were. So we believe these lies, right? They take young boys, and this is a good example. They take our sons and they say, he can't pay attention. We're going to put him on psychotropic medication. We don't have any real science that shows his brain is damaged, but we're going to medicate him and we're going to keep him compliant. We're going to say there's something wrong with him. And even though the symptoms get worse in the next 20 years, even though no mental health problems are fixed, we're going to keep pumping them full of pills. So it's not just what my kids will see, it's how society shapes up, right? We've been conditioned through fear. We allow sick people who hold power over us to run and control the way society works. And the worst part about it, it's not getting better, right? It's like going to the trainer, working out with the trainer, and he's giving you these foods to eat and he's telling you what exercise to do. And in 5 years, you're obese, you have high cholesterol, you just had your third stint put in your arteries, and you don't question, wait a minute, is this working? You just keep going down this path of self-destruction. So it's more than just your kids seeing manipulation. Unfortunately, it shapes all of society.
Yeah, it's Josh Hawley, and politics. Again, I'm not cheering for Josh Hawley in any way, shape, or form as a conservative. Just noting that he had a speech a couple weeks ago where he was talking about the decline of men, and he asked for a tax break for some sort of incentive to get married, right? And intact families and the lack thereof is a huge problem. And I saw, since you don't have intact families, another statistic I looked up preparing for this show was that. I'll get it wrong. So let me go here for 1 second. So it's like 40% of children from divorced homes never marry. Right? How scary is that? So when I read that from Josh Hawley, on its face, it was like, maybe we don't want to have the government incentivizing marriage. It could go down the wrong path, right? I'm kind of questioning it. I'm not just eating things as they're given to me. But then I read a stat like that and I'm like, man, people have been damaged. Maybe they do need a little help, right? Maybe they do need a little encouragement in there. And, hopefully they get around a men's group and good examples once they do. But that's a staggering statistic. We're on a road to hell with stats like that, because it only gets worse in the next generation.
Well, you look at them too. I mean, we had a recent discussion on the kids that are in divorced homes, the kids that are going through this. They're not shown what a proper relationship looks like, and they don't heal from their childhood. So how could they ever maintain a relationship in their adulthood? It's not just that those 40% of kids aren't good. It's not they're bad kids who don't get married. They're probably very good kids who had a lot of great potential, but they just can't heal. And the examples they see are very poor. I mean, dude, if you were surrounded by a bunch of Peter Griffins and Homer Simpsons, would you really want to get married? They're just fat, lazy, beaten men. And you look at a lot of men out there and you look around and, I'm not going to go on the same trope that everybody goes on. When I go out to town, there's a lot of squared away families. These are in shape, man. I'm in Farmville, man. These are hardworking people and their families are put together. Their kids are squared away, so every now and then you'll see the guy who's just following his wife browbeaten. That's more in the city areas. But where I'm looking right now, I'm around a lot of strong families. And if I were to go to those two places and they're like, hey, Zach, do you want to be married? And one of those spots would be like, hell no. Look at those married men. They hate their lives. And another one, absolutely. Look at how happy they are. If we can get more examples of dudes who are squared away being out there, I think we'll have a lot more, fuck the government incentivizing this. Absolutely not. But I think there'll be a greater incentive for young men to want to find a family, to want to a wife, and then start a family. They'll want to do that because they'll see, look at those men. They're healthy. They're wealthy. They're always smiling. They've got friends. They're still going on adventures, and they have wonderful kids they love and get to see daily, and a wife who supports their mission. I would love that. I think you'd see a lot more healthy relationships if we had a lot more healthy relationships for them to embody. But it's not popular or cool to be in a healthy marriage with strong fucking kids. It's not easy to do that because, hey, it's easier to be fat than fit. It's easier to be shambles, just exist, than to actually lead a family. And so very few do it. And there's very few examples.
Guys are trying to achieve way too much and monetarily through their job. And it's because what Anthony was talking about in terms of dilution of that dollar, the value of the dollar, and also all the filters it goes through before you actually get your share of the pie. Right. So, when I was growing up, getting to $100,000 in terms of a yearly income was a big deal, but they say now 100,000 is, millions to do 100,000. Right. And guess what? You're a slave, right? If that's what you're doing and that's what you want to do, you're a slave, because there's different ways where you can make a lot less money, get less of it siphoned off. And in a lot of cases, almost none of it siphoned off to people trying to, get rich off you, where you don't have to aspire to that BS, right? Like, just go live your life, figure out ways to make things work without having to make money for somebody else to get a cut. And now you can figure out what your number is. It doesn't have to be what society tells you to slave for. I was going to bring that up earlier, so I figured
it's not just about money, right? It's not just about money. That's not what we're advocating here. There's so many men. You have to pull those parasites off you, right? You have to get people who are draining energy out of your life. And, I think back in my 30s when I had to go down this path to improve and self-improvement, acquiring self-knowledge. I think back now, seeing that the position I'm in, with being around Zac and 200 other men in a fraternity, when I was in my 30s, I didn't have anybody telling me, oh, what are you doing? You're supporting a fucked up system, right? The reason why you're not happy, you're always working, you're just going, and you're not even reaping the full benefit, right? I didn't have anybody saying that to me. Everybody was like, work harder, be a man. And I was like, but this can't be what life is about, right? It can't just be supporting a system that's corrupt and evil, right? Taking my money. Now, I look back at that, man. I have conversations with other men in the fraternity, and they're like, dude, we got to do this. You got to put your money here. You got to buy some rental properties. You got to invest in crypto. And I get overwhelmed because there's so many men who are talking about being free men, getting out of the system, right? Doing what's best for you, doing what's best for your family. And it honestly felt a little foreign at first, right? It felt a little weird. I'm like, wow, where did these guys come from? Where the fuck were they 10 years ago? But if we can start to build that, then the guys in their 30s, the guys in their 20s, they're going to far exceed anything that we could even imagine, right? Government's going to be tiny. Everybody thinks we're going to go into communism and socialism and huge government. I believe within the next few generations, good will prevail. My kids, my grandkids are going to kick the shit out of any politician in office trying to control their life.
Mm-hmm. And this goes to the tribe too, though. When you think about what you just said with the tribe aspect, you're thinking about your kids going out there, but there are also men in their young 20s that are coming up in FOE. We have worked with men before they were married. They got married. We've worked with these men before they were fathers. They became fathers. They're starting out to where we have, we're talking about the patriarchy, lead your family. We've taught the future patriarchs. These men are raising kids from the womb. So Anthony's like, well, Zac started earlier. Well, they started before me. So we're now 2 generations ahead already, like live. So if Anthony passed to me and I passed to them, and Anthony and I and all those other men are passing to these young men who get to even start, their kids are going to be rolling up behind our kids, like dual wielding fucking freedom. They're not going to know anything but that because their father was locked in. He had the wife. They were on the same page. So this is already happening. So I don't want what Anthony just said to be lost and like, oh, we're for generations, this huge thing. It's not so far out of reach because it's literally happening now. One of our men had a baby today. His child was born this morning. So big shout out to Jorge because he's now going to be bringing up the next one. Another father, another child, another strong family. This is happening now. The resistance, those pushing back against the current narrative, they're already born up and running. It's not something we have to build. It's happening.
That's a beautiful thing. I tell people in my generation, pay attention to those 20-year-olds, right? Because I believe you, Zac, and I've seen it in your, I don't know what they're called on Twitter, the rooms that you guys run sometimes with some of the other guys. One of the biggest, the spaces. One of the biggest takeaways I have from sitting in on some of them, and thanks for letting me participate every now and again, was hearing that there was young guys looking for answers before they had kids. Like they want to get it down because they've come up in a situation where they realize, because they're internet first all the time, that's where the information is, right? That's where the best information is, going and seeking it out on the internet, and they don't have to wait. They can just go get prepared now. And I see it happening. And Anthony, I believe what you're saying 100%. Maybe it's our grandkids, whatever, but it will not be a submission future, right? It will be a victorious future. My wife comes from a former communist Poland, and I see what it did to those people. It is never going to happen here. I just know what's going on here in terms of our character, and there's no way it gets to that. There's going to be people turning and coming to find out what we're doing before they ever get close to that, because it is not a great place to be. It creates that type of culture is just not good. And America's just got too much momentum where I don't think as asleep as people are, they will wake up before they allow that to happen to them, because it's real. People haven't seen what it's like. Everybody gets the bed of roses situation, but go to Poland for a little bit, right? They're 30 years removed from communism and they're still scratching and clawing to get back out. And that's not speaking bad of the Polish people. But they got beaten down pretty good, and there's some strong people, and they're going to be victorious too. So I think it's a good ending for everybody. Nobody's going back there. How do you guys want to end it, man? You guys want to?
Anthony's the best at ending things.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And actually, when on the Facebook Live, I checked out the last time, I heard you guys joking about that.
Yeah,
It's incredible. You know, like he'll come in. There is an art to this, and Anthony's new to the podcast world, but his insights it's incredible to watch it play out because you'll see him break it down with the guys. And I mean, obviously I fuck with them, you know, like we have a good time with this. We are dads enjoying this. This is something we'd be doing, whether you were watching or not. We were doing it, but whether you were watching or not. So the fact that it's public is sort of just, all right, let's try to share this with the world and get it out there. But the fun is still the same. And when you're going around, when you roll with people like that, multiple times we've referenced each other, like, hey, you know, I learned this from him. He learned this from me. It's one of those things where that's normal. And people who hear this might be like, well, that's a little like, what are these two ups? Every man should have a relationship with multiple men in his life where you're just rolling like that. Like that, you talk about the things that are sort of off limits to the masses. Like we talk about faith, we talk about money, we talk about taxes, we talk about religion in the context of good or bad, or this versus that, beneficial, pros, cons, all those things, politics. Obviously, we talk about all the things that you're not allowed to talk about because when you talk about them, they're not so scary. You strip the power of them. And now they're just a thing to be used, a tool to be used by you to grow. So with Anthony, as he's growing in this, you know, the art of the intro and outro of the podcast, it's just been a fun little jam there. But don't let that the joking take away from the severity of what it is we're discussing. Like it is funny, you know, and I love to joke around about it. At the same time, these are real lives we're talking about. And the information we're talking about just on here, nobody on this panel, the three of us, have any idea which father is going to hear it and change his entire fucking life off it.
Exactly.
So that's as much as we laugh and joke, I really want to focus on that aspect. And when we're wrapping it up, you know, this is real shit, but it has to be applied. That's the only way it works. We have to apply what we just discussed.
Yep. If you have something going on, the only way to solve it is to share it with another man, right? I believe that because it's been the key for me, and I've seen it be the key for so many men. So on that, to that point, Zac, yes, get out there and share it. Have real conversations. You're going to grow, and you're going to help somebody else grow when you put aside, you know, the meaningless conversation about the football game or whatever, and have a real conversation. So Anthony, over to you to end it.
I was just going to say that this is your show, so I'm glad I don't have to end it.
We're good, guys. This was a real fun conversation. I'm so grateful that y'all took the time, and I know we're going to go catalog this, and it's going to go sit there. And like you said, Zac, somebody's going to hear it. These podcasts have a tendency of finding the right people. And you know, that's why I do it, not for me, to an extent, right? Let's get it out there and let's get good information to people. So guys, you're doing great work as individuals with the Fraternity of Excellence, with Peaceful Fathers, and together with Oak Rock Fatherhood. So anybody who does not subscribe to their Facebook page or their YouTube channel, go ahead and type in Oak Rock in the search bar. You'll get it. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you follow these gentlemen. I've had the pleasure of, you know, speaking to them personally and building a little bit of a relationship. And just in the little time we've been able to do that, and I've shared it here, I've taken away some really good things I've been able to apply in my life. So go ahead and follow them. Check them out. They're doing something on Oak Rock every Wednesday, I believe, right? Or is it, what day is it?
Every Wednesday is our live Q&A.
And these guys are consistent. I don't think they've missed a Wednesday. So they're going to be doing their live Q&A every Wednesday. So if you go on Facebook, instead of watching Fox News or whatever, tap on the Oak Rock, hear what these guys have to say. They're having on some pretty cool guests too. So real good value for you all to tap into. Anything else, Zac?
No, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
All right. Let's hit the stop recording button.
So I wake up early. I wake up at 4:45. I like to have that psychological win over the enemy. The enemy. When I wake up in the morning and I don't know why, I'm thinking about the enemy and what they're doing. And I know I'm not active duty anymore, but it's still in there that there's a guy I've seen is a very dark place. It's a dark place. That's what war is. The enemy. The enemy. When I wake up in the morning and I don't know why, I'm thinking about the enemy. When your job, which my job was to expand that darkness in many ways. I mean, the war is about killing people. And so for me, when I look to someone that's successful, it's someone that brings some light into that darkness. That darkness. The first people that come to my head are Mark Lee, who is one of my guys, first SEAL killed in Iraq. Mike Mansour, one of my guys, second SEAL killed in Iraq. And Ryan Job, one of my guys, wounded in Iraq, blinded in both eyes, made it home, married his high school sweetheart, got her pregnant, finished his college degree, and after his 22nd surgery to repair the damage that was done to his head and face, there were complications and he died as well. But all of those guys, in all that darkness, they did things, they made a sacrifice that was completely selfless. And to do that, and to live, and fight, and die like a warrior, that to me is success. And those guys are my heroes.